I got to Moorcroft around 11 at night with a duffel bag and not much else. That's not completely true. I had my truck, a 2008 Ford Ranger that burned oil and made a sound like grinding teeth whenever I shifted into third. I had $463 in my checking account. I had a phone with 17 missed calls from a number I'd blocked 2 weeks ago. And I had this job, this night shift position at a Sinclair truck stop that I'd found on Indeed at 3 in the morning, applied to without reading the full description, and somehow gotten hired for over a phone interview that lasted maybe 6 minutes. But the duffel bag thing felt more accurate. That's what it felt like. Showing up with nothing. 3 months since the accident. That's how I was counting time now, everything divided into before and after that Tuesday in July when Sawyer's Civic got hit by a semi that ran a red light outside Des Moines. The police said he died instantly. People kept saying that like it was supposed to help. It didn't. 2 months since Summer left. She didn't leave right away. She tried for a few weeks, I'll give her that. But I wasn't really there anymore, even when I was sitting right next to her. She filed in August. I signed the papers in September and didn't contest anything. She could have whatever she wanted. I didn't care. 1 month since First National took the house. I'd stopped making payments after Summer left. Just stopped. They sent letters. I didn't open them. Eventually, a guy showed up and changed the locks while I was at the grocery store. I came back and my key didn't work anymore. That was it. So yeah, Moorcroft, Wyoming. A town I'd never heard of until I Googled the address for this job. Population around 1,000, sitting right off Interstate 90 in the northeastern corner of the state. I'd driven 16 hours straight from Iowa, through Nebraska, and into Wyoming, watching the landscape flatten out and then crack open into something older, the kind of empty that makes you understand how small you actually are. The Sinclair station sat by itself about a mile off the interstate exit. I spotted it from the highway, this bright island of fluorescent light against all that prairie darkness. The sign was maybe 30 feet tall, the green dinosaur logo lit up but flickering, not in a regular pattern, just occasionally cutting out for a second or two before coming back. I pulled into the lot and killed the engine. The grinding sound echoed for a few seconds after. The building was bigger than I expected, not just a gas station, a full truck stop, 2 rows of pumps out front, diesel lanes on the far side, and a main building that looked like it had been added onto over the years. The original structure was probably from the 60s, all that angular concrete and flat roof design, but someone had tacked on sections that didn't quite match. The lights inside were that particular shade of white that makes everyone look sick. 3 semis in the parking lot, a couple of cars, nobody moving around that I could see. I sat there for a minute. The heater in the Ranger didn't work great, and October in Wyoming was colder than October in Iowa. I could see my breath. I grabbed the duffel bag from the passenger seat and got out. The wind hit me immediately, just constant, coming across the plains with nothing to stop it. It smelled like diesel and dirt and something else, something I couldn't place. Not bad exactly, just old, like how antique stores smell, or your grandparents' basement. The door chimed when I walked in, one of those electronic sensors, the kind that makes a little 2-tone beep. The smell inside was stronger. Diesel, definitely. Burnt coffee from a pot that had probably been sitting for hours. Cleaning solution, that industrial pine stuff. And underneath it all, that same old smell from outside. Stronger in here. The front area had a register counter, a few aisles of travel supplies and snacks, a coffee station along the back wall. Everything looked worn in but clean. The floor was that speckled linoleum that hides stains. The shelves were metal, painted white but chipped in places. Fluorescent lights overhead, humming at a frequency you felt more than heard. A woman stood behind the counter. She was maybe late 50s, sturdy build, gray-streaked black hair pulled back tight, wire-rimmed glasses. She wore a flannel shirt, dark red, and she was looking at me before I'd fully processed she was there. "Harrison Harris," she said. not a question. Yeah. Sheila Blair. She didn't offer her hand. You're early. I glanced at the clock on the wall behind her. 11:14. Shift starts at midnight, right? It does. She studied me for a second. You look like hell. I didn't know what to say to that. It was probably true. You eat today? She asked. I tried to remember. I'd stopped for gas around 6, bought a Gatorade. Before that, nothing since yesterday morning, maybe. I'm fine, I said. Sheila made a sound that could have been anything. She reached under the counter and pulled out a laminated card. Maybe the size of a playing card, but rectangular. She set it on the counter between us. Before you clock in, she said. Before you do anything else, you read this. I picked it up. The lamination was old, yellowed at the edges. The text was typed, actual typewriter text, then photocopied. 6 numbered lines. 1. Never serve fuel to vehicles with Montana plates after midnight. 2. If the bathroom lights flicker 3 times, lock yourself in the office until they stop. 3. Don't acknowledge anyone standing near pump 7. 4. Never accept tips left in quarters, dated before 1970. 5. If the radio switches to AM 1040 on its own, turn it off immediately. 6. Never help anyone whose shadow doesn't match their body. I read it twice. Then I looked up at Sheila. Is this a joke? Her expression didn't change. Do I look like I'm joking? She didn't. That was the problem. What is this? I asked. Rules, Sheila said. You memorize them tonight. Tomorrow I expect that card back. Rules for what? For working here. I looked at the card again. Montana plates after midnight. Bathroom lights flickering 3 times. Shadows that don't match. It sounded like something from a creepypasta forum, the kind of thing people write to freak out teenagers. I don't understand, I said. You don't need to understand. Sheila's voice was flat, matter of fact. You just need to follow them. But what do they mean? Why would... Harrison. She said my name like she was stopping me from walking into traffic. I'm not explaining them. I'm telling you they exist. You follow them or you don't work here. That's it. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Outside, the wind pushed against the windows. I needed this job. That was the thing. I needed it because I had $463 and nowhere to go back to. I needed it because sleeping in the Ranger in Wyoming in October wasn't going to work much longer. I needed it because this was the only place that had called me back. The only place that hadn't asked questions about the gaps in my employment or why I was applying for night shift work in a town I'd never been to. Okay, I said. Okay, you'll follow them? Yeah. Sheila watched me for a long moment. Then she nodded once. Good. I looked at the card again. What happens if someone breaks them? It was a reasonable question. I thought it was reasonable. But something changed in Sheila's face. Not her expression exactly. Something behind it. Her eyes went distant for a second, like she was looking at something I couldn't see. What happens? I asked again. Sheila's face went slack, completely neutral, wiped clean of whatever had been there before. They stopped being employees, she said. The first week was boring. That's the honest truth. Nothing happened. I worked midnight to 8 a.m. 5 nights in a row, and the weirdest thing I dealt with was a guy who tried to pay for $73 in diesel with a crumpled 50 and a handful of what turned out to be Canadian coins. He got mad when I told him I couldn't take them, yelled something about government overreach, left his truck at the pump and walked off into the dark. His truck was still there when Sheila arrived for her shift at 7:55. She didn't ask about it, just nodded once and said she'd handle it. The bathroom lights didn't flicker. The radio stayed on whatever classic rock station it was set to, playing the same Foreigner and Boston songs every 4 hours. Nobody stood near Pump 7 because Pump 7 had an out-of-order sign zip-tied to it, and I never asked why. I checked every quarter I got as change from the register, just in case. Newest one I saw was from 2008. Most were from the 90s or early 2000s. I watched the customers anyway. Couldn't help it. There was a rhythm to the night shift. Truckers came through between midnight and 3 a.m. mostly, guys on long hauls who needed coffee and a chance to stretch without losing too much time. They didn't talk much. Paid cash or card, used the bathroom, bought whatever snack looked least stale. A couple of locals stopped by for cigarettes or energy drinks on their way to early shifts at the mine or the rail yard. Sheila told me Moorcroft had a coal mine about 15 miles north and a Burlington Northern yard another 10 past that. I memorized the rules on my second night. Gave the card back to Sheila the next evening when she came in to check inventory. She took it without comment and put it back under the counter in the same spot she'd pulled it from. "You have questions," she said. Wasn't asking. I did. About 100 of them. But I just shook my head and told her I was good. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "You'll do fine." I figured she meant I'd do fine at the job, scanning items, taking payment, keeping the coffee station stocked with those little plastic cups of creamer that nobody actually used because everyone just drank it black. That kind of fine. By day 6, I'd started thinking the rules were bullshit. Some kind of initiation thing for new hires, see how long the desperate guy would play along before calling it out. I'd worked at a Quick Trip in Des Moines for 8 months back in my early 20s, and they'd pulled stuff on new people too. Sent someone to the back to find the dough repair kit for donuts we didn't even make on site. Told another guy the soda machine had to be recalibrated every morning using a process that was just him pressing random buttons for 10 minutes, while everyone watched on the security camera. This felt the same. Elaborate, kind of mean, but harmless. Still, I watched. I checked every license plate that came through after midnight, looking for Montana. Saw plenty of Wyoming plates, green and gold with the bucking horse. Saw Colorado, South Dakota, Nebraska. One guy from Oregon, which seemed like a hell of a detour, but no Montana. I watched the shadows too. Couldn't help that either. Started noticing things I'd never paid attention to before. How the angle of someone's shadow changed when they moved under different lights. How some people cast longer shadows than others depending on where they stood. How my own shadow stretched toward the door when I stood behind the register because of the fluorescent panel directly overhead. It was stupid. I knew it was stupid. But I kept watching anyway. Day 7, nothing. Day 8 started the same. I clocked in at midnight, checked the coffee station, wiped down the counter even though it was already clean. Sheila had left everything perfect, the way she always did. Register drawer had the usual 200 in starting bills. Bathroom was stocked with paper towels and those industrial toilet paper rolls that could probably survive a nuclear blast. First customer came in at 12:32. Local guy, maybe mid-40s, bought Marlboro Reds and a Rockstar. Paid with a 10. I gave him his change, and he left. 12:43, a Honda Civic pulled up to pump 5. College-age kid looked dead on his feet. Prepaid $30 on a card, pumped his gas, drove off. Didn't even come inside. I was restocking the beef jerky display, the kind that comes in those big plastic jars that always smell faintly rancid no matter how fresh they are, when I heard the diesel engine, deep rumble, loud enough that I heard it over the classic rock station, which was playing that Steve Miller song about the Joker. I looked up through the front windows. A Peterbilt, dark blue, maybe black, hard to tell under the sodium lights in the lot. It rolled past the diesel lanes and stopped near pump 3. I put down the jerky jar and moved back to the register. The engine cut off. Driver's door opened. Guy who climbed down was maybe 50. Weathered face, the kind of deep tan that comes from years in the sun, wore a denim jacket and a Broncos cap. Looked completely normal. Looked like half the truckers who came through here. He walked to the door. It beeped when he came in. "Evening," he said. Voice was rough, but not unfriendly. "Evening," I said back. He walked up to the counter, didn't grab a coffee or look at the snacks, just came straight to me. Need to prepay for pump 3, he said. 50 should cover it. He pulled out his wallet. I glanced past him through the window at his truck, Montana plates, white text on blue. I could see the edge of the mountain graphic they put on them. My hand was already moving toward the register when my brain caught up. Montana plates. I looked at the clock on the wall above the coffee station. 12:47 a.m. After midnight, Rule 1. Never serve fuel to vehicles with Montana plates after midnight. I stopped. My hand hovered over the register keys. The driver was watching me. Patient. Waiting. I pulled my hand back. Sorry, I said. Can't authorize that pump right now. He tilted his head slightly. Something wrong with it? System error, I said. The lie came out smooth. Too smooth, probably. Register won't let me activate it. Been having issues all night. That part wasn't true. The register had been fine, but he didn't know that. Huh, he said. Just that. His expression didn't change at all. You could try pump 5, I said, or the diesel lanes on the other side. Pump 3's fine, he said. If it's just the system. Something happened then. Hard to describe. His face didn't move. His body didn't move. But something behind his eyes shifted, like when you're looking at someone through a window and they adjust a curtain you didn't realize was there. A settling. A clicking into place. Can't help you, I said, kept my voice flat. System won't authorize it. He looked at me for 3 more seconds, 4, 5. Then he nodded once. Appreciate you trying. He turned and walked back to the door. It beeped when he left. I watched him through the window. He climbed back into the Peterbilt, pulled the door shut. The engine started, except I didn't hear it start. The truck was running. I could see the exhaust, could see the running lights come on, but there was no sound. Not the diesel rumble, not the air brake hiss. Nothing. Complete silence. The truck pulled away from pump 3, rolled across the lot, and turned onto the access road leading back to the interstate. I watched until the taillights disappeared. My hands were shaking. I put them on the counter and pressed down until they stopped. It was 3:15 a.m. when I finally went to check the security footage. Sheila had shown me the system on my second night. 4 cameras, 1 covering the lot, 1 on the front door, 1 on the register, 1 on the bathroom hallway. Everything recorded to a digital system in the back office, kept for 30 days before overwriting. She said I probably wouldn't need it, but I should know where it was. I went to the office, a cramped room behind the bathroom hallway with a desk, a filing cabinet, and a monitor showing the 4 camera feeds in a quad split. I sat down in the rolling chair that squeaked and pulled up the playback interface, found 12:47 a.m., clicked play. The lot camera showed the angle from above the front door, looking out over the pumps and parking spaces. I watched myself through the window, restocking the jerky display. Watched the timestamp tick forward, 12:43, the Honda Civic at pump 5, clear as anything, 12:47. The driver appeared at the edge of frame, walking from the right side, from where the diesel lanes were. He walked across the lot toward the building. His boots made no visible impact on the dusty pavement, but that could have been the camera quality. I stopped the playback, rewound 10 seconds. Watched again. The driver walked into frame from the right. Just him. No truck. I could see the whole lot. All the pumps. Pump 3 was empty. Had been empty since the Civic left at 12:44. The driver walked to the door. Disappeared from the lot camera's view. I switched to the door camera feed. Found the same timestamp. He came in. Walked to the counter. I watched myself talk to him, watched his mouth move. The audio on these cameras was shit, just static mostly, but I could see the conversation happening. Watched him turn and leave. Switched back to the lot camera. He walked out of the building, across the lot, moving toward the right edge of frame where he'd first appeared. And then he was gone. Just stepped out of frame and vanished. No truck, no engine, no Montana plates. I sat there staring at the monitor, rewound it, watched again. Driver appears, driver enters building, driver leaves building, driver disappears. The truck never existed, not on camera, but I'd seen it. Seen the Montana plates, seen the exhaust, seen the lights. I rewound it a third time, fourth. Watched the same thing happen over and over. The man walking from nowhere, walking back to nowhere. My chest felt tight. I realized I'd stopped breathing and pulled in air that tasted stale and metallic. The rules weren't hazing, weren't a prank, weren't some elaborate joke played on the desperate new guy. Something was wrong with this place. Something fundamental, something that let trucks exist and not exist at the same time, that let men walk out of empty air and ask for diesel at 12:47 a.m. with Montana plates that shouldn't be there. And I just passed some kind of test. Didn't know what the test was for. Didn't know what happened if you failed. But I'd followed the rule, and the man had left, and now I was sitting in a back office watching security footage of something that shouldn't be possible. I kept the video running, watched the empty lot, watched nothing happen, watched the timestamp tick forward into the rest of my shift. 2 weeks in, I figured I'd gotten the rhythm of the place down pretty well. Same shift every night, midnight to 8. Same coffee routine, same register checks, same handful of truckers and local workers passing through. The rules felt less urgent by then, more like background noise. I'd checked every Montana plate situation twice, none after midnight, and watched enough shadows to know mine always fell where it should. That was the night I learned the rules weren't background noise. It happened at 1:43 in the morning. I remember the exact time because I just finished ringing up a guy who bought 2 Monster energy drinks and a pack of Slim Jims, and the receipt printer stamped 1:42 at the top. He left, and I was alone again. The radio played that same Foreigner song it always did around this hour. Cold as ice, I think. I was restocking the cigarette display behind the counter when the bathroom lights flickered, just once at first. I looked up. The bathroom was down a short hallway to the left of the main counter, maybe 15 feet away. Fluorescent lights spilled out from the doorway onto the linoleum. The light dimmed, brightened, went back to normal. Then it flickered again. My hand stopped halfway to the Marlboro carton. Rule 2 surfaced in my head word for word, exactly how I'd memorized it from that laminated card. If the bathroom lights flicker 3 times, lock yourself in the office until they stop. I stood there holding a box of cigarettes and waiting. The third flicker came maybe 5 seconds later. Not a quick stutter like a bad ballast, deliberate, on, off, on, like someone flipping a switch with intention. I dropped the cigarettes on the counter and moved. Didn't think about it. The office door was behind the register, a narrow room I'd only been in twice to grab cleaning supplies from the metal cabinet Sheila kept stocked. I pushed through the door, stepped inside, and turned the lock. The click sounded loud in the small space. The office was maybe 6 feet by 8 feet. Metal desk shoved against one wall, filing cabinet in the corner, that supply cabinet, and a narrow window that looked out onto the main floor. The window had those old wire-reinforced panes, the kind you see in schools. Probably 4 inches wide, running horizontal at about eye level. I could see most of the register area and part of the bathroom hallway through it. My heart was going pretty hard. I pressed my back against the wall next to the window and tried to steady my breathing. The lights in the bathroom were strobing now. Not flickering anymore, strobing. On and off in a steady rhythm that felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. Too regular, too purposeful. The fluorescent tubes flashed white, then dark white, then dark, and the pattern threw harsh shadows across the hallway that stretched and snapped back with each pulse. I should have looked away. That would have been the smart thing. Just stand there with my eyes closed and wait it out. I didn't look away. Something moved in the bathroom doorway. At first I thought maybe it was just the strobing light, messing with my vision. Shadows doing weird things. But then I realized the shape moving in the doorway wasn't a shadow. It had mass, substance. It was coming through the door frame, but not the way things normally move through doorways. It folded. That's the only word I have for it. The thing folded itself through the frame. Angles that shouldn't exist bent in on themselves, and the shape compressed and expanded in ways that made my eyes hurt to follow. It moved like origami, like someone creasing paper and unfolding it again, except the paper was something solid and three-dimensional and absolutely should not have been able to do what it was doing. I pressed harder against the office wall. My heart hammered so loud I could hear it over the muffled Foreigner song still playing on the radio out front. The thing kept folding through the doorway, piece by piece, section by section. I couldn't make out details. Every time I tried to focus on one part of it, that part would fold again and my brain would slide off it like water off glass. The strobing lights made it worse. Each flash illuminated the thing mid-fold, freezing it in positions that violated every law of physics I understood. And I didn't understand much about physics, but I knew things weren't supposed to bend that way, weren't supposed to exist in multiple planes at once, weren't supposed to fold through space like reality was just a suggestion. I couldn't look away. I wanted to. I tried to make myself turn my head, close my eyes, focus on literally anything else, but my eyes stayed locked on that doorway and the impossible thing moving through it. My mouth had gone completely dry. I realized I was holding my breath and forced myself to inhale. The air tasted stale and metallic like the office hadn't been ventilated in years. The thing finished coming through the doorway, or maybe it gave up. I don't know. It folded one more time and then it was just gone. Not gone like it walked away. Gone like it had never been there in the first place. The bathroom doorway was empty again, just harsh white light strobing onto linoleum. I stayed pressed against the wall with my pulse racing and my hands shaking. The office felt too small, like the walls were closer than they'd been a minute ago. I kept my eyes on that window, watching the bathroom hallway, waiting for the thing to come back. The strobing continued, on, off, regular as a metronome. I counted the flashes without meaning to. Lost count around 30, started over, lost count again. I checked my watch. 1:51, 8 minutes since the lights first flickered. That felt wrong. It felt like it had been longer, like maybe an hour had passed. But the watch face showed 1:51 and the second hand kept ticking forward in its normal rhythm. The light stopped at 1:54, no warning. They just went solid again, steady fluorescent white spilling out of the bathroom like nothing had happened. The strobing cut off mid-pulse, and the sudden stillness made my ears ring. I stood there for probably another 5 minutes, maybe 10. Rule 2 said to lock myself in the office until the lights stopped and they'd stopped, but I wasn't ready to unlock that door yet. My hands had stopped shaking, but my heart still felt like it was trying to break through my ribs. Eventually, I made myself move, turned the lock, opened the door, stepped out into the main floor. Everything looked normal. The register sat there with the cigarette cartons I'd dropped still on the counter. The radio played something by Journey now. The coffee station burbled quietly against the back wall. Through the front windows, I could see the parking lot, empty except for my Ranger and one semi parked way out by the diesel lanes. I walked to the bathroom hallway, stopped at the entrance. The lights inside were steady and bright, humming that same fluorescent hum they always did. I could see the sink, the paper towel dispenser, the 2 stall doors hanging half open. The mirror had cracked, not shattered. Cracked in a perfect spiral that started at the center and wound outward in a tight coil, the lines so precise they looked deliberate, intentional. The cracks caught the fluorescent light and threw it back in fragmented pieces. I stepped closer. The mirror was one of those big rectangular ones, maybe 3 feet wide, bolted to the wall above the sink. Condensation covered the surface, which didn't make sense because the bathroom wasn't warm and nobody had showered in here. But water droplets clung to the glass anyway, thick enough to fog the whole thing. 2 words appeared in the condensation. Almost found. I stared at them. The letters were uneven, like someone had traced them with a finger, or something that worked like a finger. The condensation around the words was disturbed, pushed aside to form the shapes. I stood there for probably 2 full minutes just looking at those words. My brain felt slow, like it was trying to process through mud. Almost found. Almost found what? Almost found who? Almost found by what? The thing that folded through the doorway. I watched the words start to fade. Condensation doesn't last long. The droplets slid down the mirror surface, merging and separating, and the letters blurred at the edges. Within maybe 30 seconds, they were gone completely. Just a wet mirror and a perfect spiral crack. I backed out of the bathroom, returned to the register. The clock above the coffee station showed 2:11. My shift ended at 8. I had 5 hours and 49 minutes left. I lasted until Sheila showed up at 7:55. She came through the door right on schedule, same dark red flannel as always, same wire-rimmed glasses. She looked at me and something shifted in her expression. Not surprise, more like recognition. "Go home, Harrison," she said. I didn't argue. Just grabbed my jacket from the office and walked out to my truck. The sun was up by then. Full daylight, clear sky, temperature probably in the mid-40s. The parking lot looked exactly like it always did. Cracked asphalt, faded yellow lines, the big Sinclair sign with its green dinosaur towering over everything. I sat in the Ranger with the engine off and stared at the building. It looked normal. Concrete walls, flat roof, glass front doors, hand-painted sign advertising coffee for $1.99. Same building I'd been working in for 2 weeks. Same building I'd walked out of maybe 100 times already. I tried to convince myself I'd imagined it, the whole thing. Maybe I'd been more tired than I thought. Maybe I'd fallen asleep standing up and dreamed the lights strobing, the thing in the doorway, the cracked mirror. People hallucinate when they're exhausted. That's a real thing. I'd read about it somewhere. Except I hadn't imagined the mirror. The spiral crack was still there. I'd seen it when I left, visible through the bathroom doorway from the register. Real and permanent and impossible to explain away. And I hadn't imagined the thing that folded through the doorway. The thing that bent reality just by existing. The thing that shouldn't have been possible, but absolutely was. I sat in my truck until almost noon, just watching the building. Truckers came and went. A few cars pulled up to the regular pumps. Everything looked completely ordinary in the daylight. Safe, normal, like the place didn't contain anything stranger than overpriced beef jerky and stale coffee. But I knew better now. I thought about my bank account, $463 2 weeks ago. Probably closer to $700 now after 2 paychecks, minus what I'd spent on food and gas. Not enough to go anywhere. Not enough to start over somewhere else. Not enough to matter. I thought about summer and the house I didn't own anymore and Sawyer's Civic crumpled against a telephone pole outside Des Moines. I thought about the fact that I'd driven 16 hours to get here because this was the only place that called me back. The only place that didn't ask questions. I thought about those 2 words in the condensation. Almost found. My shift started again at midnight. 11 hours and 47 minutes from now, I could leave. Pack up the Ranger and drive back to Iowa or head further west into Montana or just point the truck in any direction and go. Find another gas station job somewhere. Another night shift, another town I'd never heard of. But I didn't have anywhere else to go. That was the truth of it. This job was all I had. This place was all I had. I started the engine at 12:15, drove to the motel where I'd been renting a room by the week, $60 every 7 days, paid in cash to a guy who never asked for ID. I went inside and lay down on the bed with my clothes still on and my eyes open, staring at the water-stained ceiling. I didn't sleep. At 11:43 that night, I got back in the Ranger and drove to the Sinclair station. The big green dinosaur sign flickered in the darkness, same as always. I parked in my usual spot and walked to the building. The wind smelled like diesel and dirt, and that same old smell I still couldn't identify. Sheila was behind the counter. She looked at me when I came through the door. "You came back," she said. "Yeah." She nodded once, didn't say anything else, just handed me the register keys and walked out. I clocked in at midnight and started my shift. Sheila came through the door at 7:55 like always. Same flannel, same wire-rimmed glasses, same measured way of walking to the counter. I'd already wiped everything down. Coffee station stocked, register counted. The bathroom mirror still had that spiral crack, but I'd mopped the floor and restocked the paper towels and industrial toilet paper like nothing had happened. "Morning," I said. She nodded once, set her purse under the counter in the spot she always used. Then she looked at me for a long moment, longer than usual. "Go wait in the office," she said. That was it. No explanation. I went. The office was the same 6x8-foot box I'd locked myself in last night. Metal desk, filing cabinet, supply cabinet, that narrow horizontal window with the wire-reinforced glass. I stood next to the desk and waited, listening to Sheila move around out front. Heard the register drawer open and close. Heard her footsteps go down the hallway toward the bathroom. Heard them come back. She came into the office and shut the door behind her. "You can clock out in a minute," she said. "Need to make a call first." I didn't ask why I had to be there for it. Just nodded. Sheila pulled an old Nokia flip phone from her purse. Not a smartphone. One of those indestructible bricks from 15 years ago. She dialed a number she clearly had memorized, then put the phone to her ear and waited. Someone picked up. I couldn't hear the voice on the other end, just a faint buzz of sound. "It's Blair," Sheila said. "Sinclair Station, Moorcroft." Pause. "Containment's holding," she continued. Her voice was flat, matter of fact, like she was reading inventory numbers. "Had another flicker event last night. Bathroom lights, full sequence. Harris followed protocol." Harris. That was me. Another pause. Longer this time. Sheila's jaw tightened just slightly. "I'm aware," she said, "but the frequency's increasing. This is the third event in 2 weeks." The person on the other end said something I couldn't make out. Sheila listened, her face completely neutral. "Understood," she said finally. "But you need to know. The Wyoming line's weakening. I can feel it. Same way Gordon could before he..." She stopped, listened. "No," she said. "Harris is solid. He'll hold." My stomach did something uncomfortable. I kept my face blank and stayed still. Sheila said a few more words I didn't catch. Something about schedules and monitoring intervals. Then ended the call and put the phone back in her purse. She looked at me. "You got questions," she said. Same tone as 2 weeks ago. Observation, not a question. I had about 1,000. I nodded. Sheila pulled the metal folding chair out from the desk and sat down, gestured for me to take the other chair, a plastic one wedged between the filing cabinet and the wall. I pulled it out and sat. "You followed the rules," Sheila said. "That's good. That's what keeps you alive." I waited. She took off her glasses and cleaned them on her flannel shirt. Probably didn't need cleaning. Just buying time to figure out how to start. "This place wasn't built for truckers," she said finally. "Not really. It was built in 1967 as a checkpoint." "Checkpoint for what?" "For what came through that year." I didn't say anything, just waited for her to keep going. Sheila put her glasses back on. Something opened up about half a mile north of here. Don't ask me what it was because nobody knows. Could have been a lot of things. Portal. Tear in reality. Thinning of the barrier between this world and somewhere else. Doesn't matter what you call it. What matters is it happened and it didn't close all the way. The hum of the fluorescent lights seemed louder than usual. Or maybe I was just noticing it more. They tried closing it, Sheila continued. Tried everything. Military, scientists, people who worked with things the government doesn't admit exist. Nothing worked. Best they could do was contain it. Build something around it that would act as a buffer. Keep things from slipping through. This truck stop, I said. This truck stop, she confirmed. Built right on top of the weak point. The rules aren't hazing, Harris. They're the lock. Each one corresponds to a specific type of incursion. My hands felt cold. I put them in my jacket pockets. Sheila leaned forward slightly. The Montana plates, those mark vehicles that exist in both realities at the same time. Serve them fuel after midnight, and you're feeding something that shouldn't be here. Strengthening its presence. The bathroom lights flickering 3 times means something's pushing through from the other side, testing the barrier. That's why you lock yourself away until it stops trying. The quarters dated before 1970. Those carry traces of the original breach. Accepting them creates a connection, pulls the past forward into the present. And the shadows that don't match their bodies? She paused. Those belong to things wearing borrowed bodies. People who aren't people anymore. Or maybe never were. I thought about the Peterbilt driver. The way something had shifted behind his eyes when I refused to activate Pump 3. That settling, clicking into place feeling. What about Pump 7? I asked. Same principle, different incursion type. You don't need the details on all of them. Just need to follow the rules. And the radio switching to AM 1040? Sheila's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes went distant for half a second. That one's for if they start broadcasting, she said. Hasn't happened in 8 years. Hope it stays that way. I processed that, filed it away with everything else. The thing in the bathroom last night, I said. The spiral crack in the mirror. The words in the condensation. It was looking for a way through, Sheila said simply. Didn't find one because you followed protocol. Locked yourself away, didn't engage, didn't give it an anchor point. That's what the rules do. They remove anchor points. Remove ways for things to attach and pull themselves into our reality. She said it so calmly, like she was explaining how to restock the coffee station. I sat there and let her words settle, tried to make them fit with everything I'd seen. The truck driver who'd driven away without his $50. The bathroom lights strobing. That thing folding itself through the doorframe in ways that shouldn't have been possible. How many people know about this? I asked. Enough, Sheila said. Not many. There's a network, stations and checkpoints across the country, all built on weak points, all staffed by people who follow the rules and don't ask too many questions. You're part of that now. And if I quit? She looked at me steadily. You won't. You don't know that. I do, she said. Because you got nowhere else to go, and because you're the type who follows rules even when you don't understand them. That's why you got hired. That's why I didn't fire you when you showed up looking like death and smelling like you'd been sleeping in your truck. I didn't argue. She was right. Sheila stood up. The original owner, the person I just called, he oversees this region. Makes sure containment holds. Makes sure the right people are in the right positions. You don't need to worry about him. Just need to do your job and follow the rules. What happened to Gordon? I asked. The guy she'd mentioned on the phone. The guy whose name had come up before as a warning. Sheila's face went neutral, completely flat. He stopped following the rules, she said. Thought he knew better. Thought he could negotiate with what's on the other side. And And now there's a standing order to never open the door if someone matching his description shows up asking to be let in. She said it without emotion. Even if he's bleeding, even if he's begging, especially if he's begging. The fluorescent lights hummed. Outside, a truck engine started up. Normal sounds. Ordinary sounds. This place is a checkpoint, Sheila said again. A barrier. And the barrier's weakening. Same as the Wyoming line. Same as a dozen other sites across the region. The frequency of incursions is increasing. 3 events in 2 weeks when we used to go months between them. That's why I needed someone solid. Someone who'd follow the rules no matter what. I looked at her. You're saying this is going to get worse. I'm saying it's already worse, she corrected. And it's going to keep going that direction until either the barrier holds or it doesn't. And if it doesn't? Sheila picked up her purse and opened the office door. Then a lot more than Moorcroft stops existing, she said. But that's not your problem. Your problem is clocking out, going home, and coming back at midnight to do it again. She walked out. I sat in the plastic chair for another minute, staring at the wire-reinforced window. Through it I could see the register counter, the coffee station, the front windows with the parking lot beyond. Everything looked normal, ordinary. A truck stop off Interstate 90 in northeastern Wyoming with a flickering dinosaur sign and diesel pumps and a bathroom with a cracked mirror. But it wasn't that. It had never been that. I'd been hired not as an attendant but as a guard, positioned at a barrier between worlds that was beginning to fail. The rules weren't arbitrary. They were the lock, the only thing keeping something vast and hungry on the other side of a weakening line. And I was the one standing at the edge of it, checking license plates and watching shadows and making sure nothing slipped through on my watch. I stood up, walked out of the office. Sheila was restocking cigarettes behind the counter, her movements efficient and practiced. Go home, Harris, she said without looking at me. I clocked out, took my jacket, walked to my Ranger. The sun was fully up now, clear sky, mid-40s. Wind that smelled of diesel and dirt, and that old smell I finally understood wasn't dirt at all. I sat in the driver's seat with the engine off and stared at the building. A checkpoint, a barrier, a lock made of rules, and I was the one holding the keys. Night 31 started the same as the others. I clocked in at midnight, checked the coffee station, wiped down the counter Sheila had already left spotless. Register drawer had the usual 200 in starting bills. Radio played something by REO Speedwagon that I'd heard probably 50 times by then. The shift stayed quiet until around 3 a.m. That's when the door sensor beeped. I looked up from restocking the Funyuns display and saw her walking in. Woman, maybe mid-30s. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, jeans and a gray hoodie. Nothing obviously wrong at first glance, but something felt off immediately. She moved too smoothly. That's the best way I can describe it. Like she was gliding instead of walking. Her feet touched the floor, but the motion didn't have the usual weight to it. No bounce. No natural shift in her shoulders or hips. Just this perfectly fluid forward progression. And her face. I've never been great at noticing what makes someone attractive or not. Summer used to joke that I couldn't pick her out of a lineup if she changed her hairstyle. But I noticed this woman's face because it was too balanced. Both sides exactly the same. Features perfectly spaced. Not like someone who just happened to be symmetrical. Like someone had measured everything with a ruler and placed it deliberately. She walked straight to the counter without looking at the coffee station or the snack aisles. Her eyes stayed on me the whole time. "Evening," she said. Her voice sounded normal. Maybe a little flat, but not enough to be obvious. "Evening," I said. "I'm trying to get to Devil's Tower." She stopped directly in front of the register. "Can you tell me the best route from here?" I figured she meant the National Monument about an hour west. Tourists asked about it sometimes, though not usually at 3 in the morning. "Take I-90 west to Sundance, then Route 24 north," I said. Signs are pretty clear once you're on 24. Thank you. She reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out 3 quarters. She placed them on the counter in a perfectly straight line. For your help. I looked at the coins. Rule 4 came back immediately. Never accept tips left in quarters dated before 1970. The first quarter showed 1964. Second one said 1968. Third showed 1969. My hand was already moving toward them when I stopped myself. Pulled back. Looked at the woman instead of the coins. Register's closed, I said. Can't accept anything right now. They're not for the register. Her smile didn't change her eyes at all. They're for you. Still can't take them. I pushed the quarters back across the counter toward her. They made a scraping sound against the laminate. Store policy. She didn't pick them up, just kept looking at me with that too perfect face and that smile that didn't reach anywhere past her mouth. That's very kind of you to follow policy, she said. The overhead fluorescent panel behind me hummed. The radio switched from REO Speedwagon to something instrumental I didn't recognize. Probably a commercial. I glanced past her at the window. Her car was parked at Pump 4. Toyota Camry looked like. Couldn't see the plates from this angle. When I looked back at her, she was still smiling. Then I noticed the shadow. The fluorescent lights created shadows that stretched toward the front windows. Mine went straight out from behind the counter. Hers should have done the same, fallen at roughly the same angle as mine based on where she stood. Her shadow was there on the wall to my left. Regular shadow shape. Nothing obviously wrong with it. Until her physical arm stayed perfectly still at her side and her shadow's arm raised up. Slow. Deliberate. The shadow arm lifted until it pointed directly at me. I kept my eyes on the woman. Didn't look at the shadow again. Didn't acknowledge what I'd just seen. Rule 6. Never help anyone whose shadow doesn't match their body. Flying J in Sundance has better maps, I said. My voice came out flat. They can give you more detailed directions. You've been very helpful already. Her smile stayed exactly the same. Her real arm still hadn't moved. Are you sure you won't take the quarters? Positive. That's a shame. She turned and walked toward the door. Same two-fluid motion, same perfect glide, but her shadow didn't turn with her. It stayed on the wall for another 3 seconds, maybe 4. Just standing there in profile, that arm still raised and pointing at where I stood behind the register. Then it slid across the wall toward the door. Not walking, sliding, like it was being pulled on a track. It passed through the door frame and disappeared. The woman was already outside by then, getting into her Camry. I watched through the window as she started the engine and pulled away from the pump. She didn't stop for gas. Just drove straight out of the lot and turned onto the access road heading back toward the interstate. I stood behind the register for probably 10 minutes after that. Just stood there. The quarters were still on the counter in their perfect line. I didn't touch them. Eventually, I went to the supply closet and got the dustpan and hand broom we used for broken glass. I swept the quarters into the pan without touching them with my hands, then dumped them into the trash can under the counter. Tied off the trash bag. Took it outside to the dumpster behind the building, even though we usually waited until end of shift for that. The wind was blowing hard. Cold enough that I should have grabbed my jacket, but I hadn't. I threw the bag into the dumpster and stood there for a minute in just my Sinclair polo, watching the empty lot and the dark access road. Nothing moved except the wind and the flickering Sinclair sign. I went back inside, washed my hands in the bathroom sink for probably 2 minutes. The spiral crack was still in the mirror from week 2. I looked at it instead of at my own face. The rest of the shift stayed quiet. One trucker came in around 4:30 for coffee and Rolaids, paid with a card, Wyoming plates, normal shadow. He left after 3 minutes. I restocked the cigarettes, wiped down the counter again, checked the coffee station twice, even though nobody had touched it. When Sheila's truck pulled into the lot at 7:55, I was still behind the register. She came through the door right on schedule, wearing her dark red flannel and wire-rimmed glasses. She looked at me, stopped, put her purse down on the counter. "You're shaking," she said. I looked at my hands. She was right. I hadn't noticed. "Office," she said. "Now." I went to the office, same 6x8 room with the metal desk and filing cabinet and wire-reinforced window. Sheila followed me in and closed the door. She didn't sit down. Neither did I. "What happened?" she asked. I told her. The woman at 3 a.m., the quarters, the shadow that didn't match, how long it stayed after she left. Sheila listened without interrupting. When I finished, she took off her glasses and cleaned them on her shirt. That thing she did when she was thinking. "You followed the rules," she said. "Yeah, good." She put her glasses back on, looked at me for a long moment. "You need to know something." I waited. "When they first opened the breach in 67, 14 people died before we figured out the containment protocol." Her voice stayed level, matter of fact. "Not workers here, researchers, military personnel, the people trying to close it. They died because they didn't understand what they were dealing with, didn't know the rules yet." She leaned against the desk. "The things that come through, they exist in spaces we don't, between radio frequencies, in reflected light, in the gaps between what we see and what's actually there. Most people go their whole lives without seeing them because they're not looking in the right places, or the wrong places, depending on how you think about it. But I saw it," I said. "You work here. You know the rules. That makes you aware." Sheila's eyes stayed on mine. "And once you see them, they see you." The office felt smaller than usual. The fluorescent hum seemed louder. "The rules protect you," she continued. "They're not just guidelines, they're barriers. You follow them. You don't give these things an anchor point. You don't engage. You don't accept what they offer. You stay on this side of the line." "What happens if I leave?" I asked. The question came out before I really thought about it. Sheila's expression didn't change. "You leave, you lose the protection. The rules work here because this place is the containment, the checkpoint. You're inside the barrier. Step outside it, go back to wherever you came from, and you're just someone who's seen things they shouldn't have. Someone who's been marked as aware. And they'll find you." She said it simply, no drama, just fact. Maybe not right away, maybe not for months. But they know you now. They've seen you see them. Eventually, they'll come looking. I thought about my Ranger in the parking lot, about the $463 I'd started with that had turned into maybe $2,000 by now, about driving back to Iowa or heading to Montana or going literally anywhere else, about nowhere to go and nothing left behind me anyway. "So I'm stuck here," I said. "You're protected here," Sheila corrected. "There's a difference." She picked up her purse and opened the office door. "Go home. Sleep if you can. You're back at midnight." I nodded. She paused in the doorway. "Harris?" "Yeah?" "You did good tonight. Followed the rules exactly right. That's why you're still standing here." She adjusted her glasses. "Keep doing that." Then she walked out to start her shift. I stood in the office for another minute. Then I got my jacket and left. Sheila told me about Gordon on a Tuesday morning after my shift. I'd been working there about 5 weeks by then. She waited until I'd finished wiping down the counter and restocking the coffee station, then told me to come to the office. She sat in the metal folding chair, and I took the plastic one wedged between the filing cabinet and wall. Same setup as before. She cleaned her glasses on her shirt, put them back on, and said Gordon's full name was Robert Gordon and he'd worked nights for 6 weeks before walking off the job. I asked what happened. Sheila said they found his car in Gillette 3 days after he stopped showing up for shifts. Engine running, driver's door open, keys in the ignition, his jacket folded on the passenger seat. His shadow was still visible in the driver's seat even though it was noon and the sun was directly overhead. I didn't say anything. Sheila said the shadow stayed there for 2 weeks. Police couldn't explain it. Towed the car to impound and the shadow moved with it, still sitting in the driver's position even when the car was in a locked garage with no light source. Eventually it faded, but Gordon never came back. I asked if they looked for him. Sheila said they looked. Found nothing. No body, no trail, no credit card activity, no phone pings. Just the car and the shadow and the jacket folded neat on the passenger seat like he'd planned to come back for it. She told me Gordon had been solid for 5 weeks, followed the rules, didn't complain, showed up on time. Then something changed during week 6. He started asking questions about the barrier, about what was on the other side, about whether the entities could communicate. Sheila warned him to stop asking and just follow protocol. Gordon said he understood but kept asking anyway. On his last shift, he called Sheila at 4 a.m. and told her he'd figured out how to talk to them. She told him to lock himself in the office and wait for her to arrive. He said he didn't need to hide anymore because they'd promised him answers. That was the last anyone heard from him. Sheila looked at me for a long time after she finished. Then she said Gordon thought he was smarter than the rules, thought he could control what he didn't understand. She said the job doesn't work that way. You follow the rules or you end up like Gordon, gone with just your shadow left behind as a warning. I understood what she was telling me. There was no quitting this job, no 2 weeks' notice, no packing up and driving to the next town, no starting over somewhere else. The barrier knew me now. The entities had seen me. I'd locked myself in the office while bathroom lights strobed. I'd refused quarters from a woman whose shadow didn't match. I'd turned away a driver with Montana plates after midnight. I was part of the checkpoint now, part of the containment system. I had $463 when I arrived in Moorcroft. I had maybe $1,500 now after 2 months of paychecks and cheap motel rent, enough to drive somewhere else and find another job, probably. Except I couldn't. Not really. Sheila didn't say I was stuck here, didn't threaten me or lock the doors. She didn't have to. I knew what I knew. I'd seen what I'd seen. And leaving meant stepping outside the rules, outside the protection, outside the barrier that kept me on the right side of the line. So I kept working. Every night, midnight to 8. I clocked in, checked the coffee station, verified the register drawer, stocked the bathroom. I watched for Montana plates and checked every quarter that came through as change. I kept my distance from pump 7 and monitored the bathroom lights for flicker patterns. I observed shadows constantly, their angles, their lengths, whether they matched the bodies casting them. The rules stopped feeling like a list I'd memorized. They became instinct, automatic. I didn't think about checking plates anymore, I just checked them. Didn't consciously track shadows, my eyes just went there on their own. The laminated card was still under the counter in Sheila's usual spot, but I hadn't looked at it in weeks. Didn't need to. The rules were in my head now, wired into my nervous system the same way breathing and blinking were. I started noticing things Sheila never mentioned, small details. The way the fluorescent lights hummed at a slightly different frequency between 3 and 4 a.m., the smell of the air when something was testing the barrier, a specific staleness like old metal and burnt plastic, the temperature drop that happened 30 seconds before an incursion event, just 2 or 3 degrees, but enough to feel if you were paying attention. I became what the place needed, a watcher, someone who stayed alert, followed protocol, didn't ask questions that didn't have safe answers. I kept the register running, and the coffee fresh and the doors locked when they needed to be locked. I held the line. That was the job, really. Not customer service or fuel sales or cleaning bathrooms. Holding the line. Gladys Nunez started training last week. Sheila brought her in on a Wednesday morning, maybe 10 minutes before my shift ended. Gladys looked about 23, blonde ponytail, new employee polo that was slightly too big for her, butterfly tattoo on her left wrist. She smiled when Sheila introduced us and said she was excited to start working here. Her voice had that nervous energy people get on their first day, talking a little too fast, laughing between sentences. Sheila said Gladys would be covering day shift, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., and that I should give her the card. I reached under the counter and pulled out the laminated rectangle. Same yellowed edges, same typewritten text, same 6 rules I'd memorized 2 months ago. I handed it to Gladys and told her to read it and memorize it by tomorrow. She took the card and looked down at it. Her smile faded as she read. She got to rule 3 or 4, then looked up at me and asked if this was some kind of joke. I said no. She looked at Sheila. Sheila said the rules were real, and Gladys needed to follow them exactly. Gladys read the card again, slower this time. I watched her face, saw the skepticism, the confusion, the nervous laugh she was trying to hold back. She asked what the rules were for. I told her they were for working here. She asked what happens if she doesn't follow them. Sheila said she wouldn't work here anymore. Gladys stood there holding the card for maybe 30 seconds without saying anything. Then she folded it carefully and put it in her pocket and said, okay, she'd memorize it. I didn't tell her about the bathroom lights or the Montana plates or the woman whose shadow stayed on the wall after she left. Didn't explain about the barrier or the checkpoint or Gordon's car in Gillette with the shadow still sitting in the driver's seat. She wouldn't have believed me anyway. Not yet. I just told her to memorize the rules by tomorrow and bring the card back to Sheila. Gladys nodded and said she would. She asked if I had any other advice for working here. I said, follow the rules. She waited like she expected more, but I didn't give her more. Sheila was watching me from behind the register, her face neutral. I grabbed my jacket from the office and walked out to my Ranger. Gladys would learn, same way I learned. Same way Gordon probably learned before he decided the rules didn't apply to him anymore. She'd work a few shifts, see something that didn't make sense, follow the rules anyway because Sheila told her to. Then she'd see something worse. And she'd keep following the rules because by then she'd understand what happened when you didn't. That's how it worked here. You either learned or you ended up gone with just your shadow left behind. I drove back to the motel and lay on the bed with my boots still on, staring at the water-stained ceiling. My phone was on the nightstand. 17 missed calls had turned into 43 over the past 2 months, all from blocked numbers. I still didn't listen to the voicemails. Didn't matter who was calling or why. That life was done. I had this one now. At 11:43 p.m., I drove back to the Sinclair station and parked in my usual spot. Sheila was behind the counter. She handed me the register keys and said Gladys had returned the card that afternoon. Said she'd memorized all 6 rules. I asked if Gladys had questions. Sheila said she had about 100, but didn't ask them. Sounded right. I clocked in at midnight and started my shift. The radio played Boston. I checked the coffee station and wiped down the counter and verified the register. Through the window, I could see my Ranger in the lot and the dark access road beyond, and the flickering Sinclair sign with its green dinosaur logo. Gladys would start tomorrow morning. She'd work her shifts and follow her rules and probably think this was all some weird hazing ritual for a few days or maybe a couple weeks. Then she'd learn different, same way I did.